Today we want to talk about a phantom. It's a phantom that haunts classrooms, boardrooms, and frankly, even dinner tables.
Yeah, it's definitely a ubiquitous one.
Right. It's a subject that triggers a visceral, almost physical reaction in a huge percentage of the population. We're talking about sweaty palms, a racing heart, that sudden crushing sense of inadequacy where your brain just completely goes blank. We are talking about mathematics.
The dreaded M word.
Exactly. But we aren't going to talk about calculus or quadratic equations today. Instead, we are debating our relationship with the subject itself. So I will be taking the position that math is a misunderstood language of profound beauty that we've simply been taught to hate. It's not a monster, but a tool for exploration.
And I'll be taking the opposing view, because while it's a nice thought, math as beauty, but let's be realistic about the phantom you just mentioned. I argue that the anxiety people feel isn't a hallucination or a misunderstanding. It is a completely rational response to a subject that is uniquely rigid, unforgiving, and frankly culturally weaponized to measure our intelligence. So the core question is, have we broken math, or is math simply designed to break us?
That is the central tension, isn't it? But I think you're conflating the tool with the torture method here. To really understand why we feel this way, we have to look at a cultural phenomenon that I find absolutely fascinating. Let's call it the dinner party test. You know the one I'm talking about?
Ah, yes, the social acceptability of failure.
Exactly. Picture it. You're at a dinner party. Someone spills a bit of wine, laughs, and says, "Oh, don't ask me to split the bill. I'm terrible at math. I can't even calculate the tip." What happens?
Everyone chuckles.
Right. Everyone chuckles. It's a bonding moment. It's relatable. People nod and say, "Me too. I hate numbers."
Yeah, it's a safe flaw to admit to in public.
Now imagine that same person standing up at the table and saying, "I'm terrible at reading. I actually can't read the menu. I never really learned how to process words."
The room goes dead silent.
Dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. It would be viewed as a tragedy, right? A profound failure of the education system, a serious personal deficit. But being bad at math, that's treated as a quirky personality trait. We wear it like a badge of honor. We say, "I'm not a math person."
It is a stark contrast, I'll give you that.
It proves that we have fundamentally severed mathematics from our definition of basic human competency. We've decided that reading is essential for the soul and for citizenship, but math is it's optional machinery. My argument is that this separation is a cultural tragedy because math wasn't invented for textbooks. It was developed for survival.
For tracking seasons, building shelter, that sort of thing.
Yes, understanding the seasons, tracking distances. Math is the language of reality. And we've taken an ancient survival instinct and turned it into red marks on a test paper.
Look, I agree that the social distinction exists, but I completely disagree on the why. I don't think people are proud of being bad at math. I think they are relieved to identify the source of their pain so they can distance themselves from it. And there is a very good reason for that pain. You call it a language, but it doesn't behave like one. And that's where your argument starts to wobble for me.
How so? It has syntax, structure, meaning. It functions exactly like a language.
But the stakes are fundamentally different. In English, or history, or philosophy, there is nuance. You can argue a thesis. You can have a unique perspective. If I interpret a blue curtain in a novel as a symbol of sadness, and you interpret it as a symbol of coldness, we can both be right. We can have a discussion about it.
Sure, the humanities offer more interpretive flexibility.
Right. But in math, specifically the math 99% of us experience in school, there is no debate. There is a right answer, and there are infinite wrong ones. That binary nature, right or wrong, true or false, creates a psychological weight that simply doesn't exist in other subjects. When a child gets a history date wrong, they think, "I forgot the date." When a child gets a math problem wrong, they don't think, "I made an error." They think, "I am wrong."
But that internal monologue is learned. It's not inherent to the numbers themselves. That's a product of how we grade, not what math actually is.
Is it not inherent? The precision is the point of the subject. You cannot charm a derivative. You cannot negotiate with a fraction. You can't write a persuasive essay to convince the teacher that 2 plus 2 actually equals 5 because of your lived experience. That rigidity feels cold, it feels mechanical, and for a developing human mind that craves connection and validation, that coldness feels like rejection.
I'm going to push back on the word cold. That rigidity you describe, that's actually structure. And structure is the foundation of safety. But the reason it feels like rejection brings us to the core of this debate, I think. It's not the binary nature of the answer that hurts. It's the speed at which we demand it. We really need to talk about the pedagogy of speed.
Well, speed is the currency of the modern world. You can't blame math for that.
I absolutely can when it comes to how we teach it. In a factory, yes, speed is money. In a financial transaction, yes. But in deep thought, absolutely not. The way we teach math has equated intelligence with velocity. Think back to elementary school, the mad-minute multiplication tests.
Oh, I remember those. The timer ticking, the sweat, the panic.
Exactly. Who finishes the worksheet first? Who raises their hand fastest? We treat math like a sprint. But real mathematics, the kind that engineers, physicists, and artists actually use, is not about speed. It's about deep, slow thinking. It's about staring at a problem for days, sometimes years.
Okay, but let's play devil's advocate here for a second. We aren't training philosophers in third grade. We are training competent workers for a fast-paced economy. If you can't calculate a dosage quickly in a hospital or estimate a load-bearing wall on a construction site, that slow thinking becomes a literal liability. Speed is a proxy for fluency. If I have to stop and think about what 7 times 7 is, I can't do the algebra.
Fluency. Yes, I agree fluency is important. But we are sacrificing understanding for the mere appearance of fluency. And there is a massive difference. When you prioritize speed, you force students to bypass the why. They stop asking, why does this formula work? And they start asking, what are the steps to get the answer so I can stop feeling stupid? They memorize, they copy. They essentially become biological algorithms.
And what is the alternative? We can't just sit in a circle and contemplate the number 7 for an hour?
The alternative is exploration. Identifying patterns. Look, if I give you a formula, you have a tool you don't understand. If I let you struggle with a pattern until you derive the formula yourself, you have ownership. The anxiety you're talking about comes from that lack of ownership. Students feel like they are blindly following rules in a language they don't speak. It's disjointed. It's just symbol manipulation to them.
I can see the romantic appeal of deriving the formula. It sounds very noble in theory, but let's look at the classroom reality. You have 30 kids. 5 of them get it instantly. They are the fast ones. The other 25 are still struggling with the pattern. In that environment, speed naturally creates a hierarchy.
An artificial hierarchy.
Artificial or not, the social consequences are incredibly real. The student who is still exploring while the others are finished feels a very specific emotion, and that is shame. That shame calcifies into an identity. This is where I think your math is beautiful argument hits a brick wall. You can't tell a kid who is drowning that the water is beautiful. They are just trying to survive the humiliation of being the last one with their pencil moving.
No, but you can teach them how to swim instead of just throwing them in the deep end and timing how long they tread water. That shame you're talking about, that is the trauma of the math person myth. I would argue this is the single most damaging idea in modern education.
The idea that some people have a math brain and others just don't.
Precisely. We treat math ability like eye color. Oh, I have blue eyes and I'm bad at math. It's just my genetics. Parents say this to their kids all the time. They say, don't worry, honey, I was bad at it too. It's a generational curse.
But isn't there some truth to it? We have to acknowledge that cognitive dispositions exist. Some brains are more wired for spatial reasoning or logic puzzles, just like some bodies are built for sprinting and others for lifting heavy weights.
Disposition, sure. Maybe you pick a concept up 10% faster. But we are talking about basic competence, not prodigy status. We don't say, I don't have the history gene or I don't have the reading gene. We accept that literacy is a skill that can be built with practice. Yet with math, we assume a strict biological cap. The reality is that math is a skill, full stop. It grows with practice. But because we believe the gene myth, the moment a student hits a struggle, they don't say, I need to practice. They say, I've hit my genetic limit. I'm not a math person. They quit before they even start trying.
I want to challenge that comparison to literacy, though. I think the barrier to entry in math is fundamentally higher, and it has to do with cognitive load and feedback.
Why is it higher?
Because of the feedback loop. This is the language analogy that often gets brought up, but it has a flaw. When you learn French, you expect to sound foolish. You expect to mispronounce things. It's a messy, social process. You can fumble your way through ordering a coffee in Paris with bad grammar and still get the coffee.
Right, communication still happens.
Exactly. But in math, if you fumble the equation, the bridge collapses.
There's that bridge argument again.
But it matters. The feedback loop in math is brutal. You are either 100% right or you are broken. That creates a high-stakes environment where practice feels exactly like failure. The cognitive wall you hit in math where you stare at a page and nothing makes sense is a uniquely panic-inducing experience. It triggers the fight-or-flight response. You can't just fumble through a calculus problem. You are completely blocked.
In that reaction, that block, is exactly what we need to deprogram. You mentioned the fight or flight response. That's pure biology. When the brain panics, the amygdala fires, and the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for logic and reasoning, literally shuts down. So when a student feels that panic, they physically cannot do the math. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
So you're saying the anxiety causes the failure, not the lack of ability.
Exactly. The logical brain goes offline, and the way out is to change the expectation from the ground up. We need to normalize confusion. In a language class, confusion is a stepping stone. In a math class, confusion is treated as a defect. If we shifted the narrative to math is hard and confusion is just a sensation of learning, we strip away the shame. We have to stop treating confusion like a stop sign.
That sounds effective in theory, but let's talk about those identity labels again. I'm a creative person. That is the most common shield people use against math. They view their identity as fluid, empathetic, and artistic. They view math as rigid, cold, and robotic. To them, embracing math feels like denying their own soul. If I'm an artist, why would I want to engage with something that feels like a spreadsheet?
Which is the greatest lie ever told. Math is creative. It is the purest form of imagination because it requires you to visualize things that don't physically exist yet.
Imagination with structure, you might say.
Yes, exactly. Think about music. Rhythm is math. Harmony is a ratio. Frequency is a number. Is a composer cold and robotic? Think about architecture. The Parthenon is geometry. Is that not art? The way a painter uses perspective, that is pure geometry. Math isn't the opposite of creativity. It is the scaffold that allows creativity to stand up. Artists use patterns. Math is just the language of those patterns.
I can concede that at the high level, for Mozart and Da Vinci, the two merge seamlessly. But for the 14-year-old sitting in geometry class, proving that two triangles are congruent doesn't feel like composing a symphony. It feels like compliance. It feels like following orders from an authority figure.
Because we haven't shown them the beauty. We show them the scales, but we never let them hear the music. We focus so much on the computation, the grunt work, that we hide the logic and the elegance. We teach them how to mix the paint, but we never let them paint the canvas.
I want to pivot back to something you touched on earlier, which was safety. You said the rigidity of math is a form of structure, and therefore, safety. I argue that this certainty is actually what scares people the most.
How can certainty be scary in a chaotic world? Everyone constantly claims they want the truth.
Because life isn't certain. Relationships are messy. Politics are gray. Emotions are completely fluid. We are used to navigating the fog. Math stands there and says, there is an objective truth. That level of certainty feels aggressive to the modern mind. It feels like a judgment. If math represents the truth and I can't understand it, then I am fundamentally broken. It's not just that I don't know the answer. It's that the answer exists, it is absolute, and I am permanently on the outside of it.
I see it complete opposite way. The certainty is grounding. It's an anchor. When everything else is opinion and spin and subjective reality, math is honest. 2 plus 2 will always be 4, regardless of your political party, your income level, or your mood. There is a profound comfort in that. But more importantly, we need to correct the idea that math is just about getting the right answer.
If it's not about the answer, what is it about? The standardized test certainly seems to think it's about the answer.
It's about the mistake. Math is built entirely on mistakes. Every formula we have, every theorem, exists because someone hit a wall, failed, tried again, and found a new path. The history of mathematics is a history of failure. It is a history of people being wrong until they were finally right.
But that history is scrubbed from the textbook. The textbook presents the polished, perfect final product. It doesn't show the 1,000 wrong turns the mathematician took. It just shows the clean, intimidating equation.
And that is the tragedy of how we teach it. We present math as a statue when it's actually a fight. If we taught the struggle, if we rewarded the process of thinking rather than just the final number, we could introduce the most powerful word in education.
Which is?
Yet.
I don't get it yet.
Exactly. It completely changes the brain's mechanism. I can't do this is a stop sign. It tells the brain to stop expending energy. It says abort mission. But I can't do this yet is a green light. It tells the brain to keep searching for the pattern. It reframes the struggle from a deficit of intelligence to a simple deficit of time.
I will admit that is a powerful shift in perspective. It moves the needle from I am stupid to I am working.
And it reconnects us to the universe. That sounds grand, I know, but think about it. The spirals in a pine cone, that's the Fibonacci sequence. The way a river branches, fractals. The acceleration of a falling object, calculus. When you understand math, you aren't just solving a puzzle on a sheet of paper. You're reading the code of the world around you. You are engaging in an active conversation with reality.
I like the idea of the conversation. I really do. But I have to bring us back down to earth as we wrap up. We can talk about pine cones and fractals and the music of the spheres all day, but next week a listener has to help their kid with algebra or pass a certification exam for their job. The anxiety is still going to be there. The fight or flight response is going to kick in.
The anxiety is there, yes, but the response to it can change.
How? Practically speaking.
By realizing that the goal isn't instant perfection. You don't have to love math, you don't have to become a mathematician, but you can stop hating it. You can stop letting it define your self-worth. You can look at that certification exam and say, this is a puzzle, not a judgment on my soul.
So essentially, we're asking for a truce.
A truth with the subject and a truce with ourselves. Instead of asking, am I good at this? Ask, what is this trying to show me? What is the pattern here?
Well, what is the pattern is certainly a less loaded question than what is the right answer.
Exactly. It invites curiosity. Fear kills curiosity. If we can lower the fear, even just by acknowledging that it's okay to be confused, that confusion is just a natural part of the process, then we make room for the curiosity to come back.
I suppose my final takeaway is that the certainty of math doesn't have to be a guillotine, it can be viewed as a puzzle. And while I still firmly believe the binary nature of the subject makes it uniquely bruising to the ego, and I maintain that speed is important in the real world, perhaps that bruising only happens because we've been taught to stand still and take the hit rather than move with the logic.
Beautifully put. We've been taught to be calculators, but we are actually meant to be thinkers.
And thinkers are allowed to be wrong.
Thinkers have to be wrong. That's how they eventually find the truth.
Well, for those listening who still feel that spike of cortisol when they see a fraction or a spreadsheet, hopefully this discussion has provided a different, maybe softer perspective. It's not just about the red marks on the paper.
No, it's about the language of patterns. It's the logic of reality. And perhaps, if we look past the trauma of the classroom, it's a source of beauty we've simply been too afraid to see.
Just remember, confusion isn't a dead end.
It's just a step toward understanding. We'll see you next time.